The United States lost 52 submarines in World War II due to a variety of reasons. Most were lost to enemy action, but horrifyingly, a few were lost due to their own torpedoes. USS Grunion was possibly one of those unfortunate submarines to be sunk by their own torpedo, either directly or indirectly. In the summer of 1942, Grunion was on her first war patrol approximately 10 miles northeast of Kiska, Alaska, when she mysteriously disappeared with all hands. The circumstances surrounding her loss would remain a mystery for 65 years until her wreck was discovered in the summer of 2007. Even after her discovery, the exact cause of her loss is yet to be conclusively determined and will likely never be. However, the evidence points to her own torpedoes. Grunion was a Gato-class diesel-electric submarine and the only ship in the United States Navy to be named for the Grunion, which is a sardine-sized fish found off the Pacific coast. Her keel was laid down on March 1, 1941. She was launched December 22nd of that year and commissioned on April 11, 1942. After completing her shakedown, she would begin her journey to the Pacific on May 24th. During her journey, Grunion would rescue 16 survivors of the USAT Jack, which was a transport ship torpedoed by U-558, a German Type 7C U-boat. She dropped the survivors of USAT Jack at Kokosolo Submarine Base and arrived in Pearl Harbor on June 20th, 1942 for 10 days of training before departing on June 30th to head towards the Aleutian Islands to begin her first war patrol in the cold and unforgiving waters of Alaska. Her first and only war patrol wouldn't last long. Grunion was patrolling north of Kiska when she made her first report, which stated she had been attacked by a Japanese destroyer. She fired on the destroyer with 3 Mark 14 torpedoes, with 2 torpedoes missing and a third running too deep, passing under the destroyer before exploding 10 yards astern of it. 5 days later, Grunion came across Subchaser Squadron 13, containing ships CH-25, CH-26, and CH-27. She attacked the subchasers with an initial spread of 6 torpedoes. 2 torpedoes passed under CH-26, but the magnetic detonators failed. However, 2 of the Japanese subchasers, CH-25 and CH-27, were sunk, with both ships going down very quickly with all hands. On July 28th, Grunion would fire 3 torpedoes in a defensive action against another Japanese destroyer. She failed to sink this destroyer, and Grunion would then endure a depth charge attack. After this encounter with the destroyer, Grunion would report intense anti-submarine activity in her area of operations. As a result, Grunion was ordered back to Dutch Harbor, Alaska, but she would never make it to Dutch Harbor and never be heard from again. Grunion never responded to the order to return to Dutch, so it's not known if the order was received. On July 30th, Grunion would make an attack on the 680-foot, 8,875-ton Japanese freighter Kanu Maru. She started her attack by launching 2 torpedoes. The first ran deep and went under the freighter, but the second slammed into the freighter with a direct hit to the engine room, knocking out the engines. The crew of the Kanu Maru followed the wake of the torpedoes back to the Grunion, whose periscope was sticking up out of the water only 1,000 yards away, and saw the Grunion launch a 3rd torpedo. This torpedo missed. By this time, the Japanese crew had started engaging the Grunion with its deck gun firing 3-inch shells and with machine guns. The crew of the freighter also frantically tried to get a Mitsubishi F-1M biplane, known as a Pete by the U.S., into the air to engage the Grunion with its 2 132-pound bombs. The Grunion then launched 3 more torpedoes. The first slammed into the No. 2 cargo hold, but the head of the Mark 14 torpedo snapped off and didn't detonate. The second torpedo hit dead center of the freighter but harmlessly bounced off. The third torpedo traveled under the stern of the Kanu Maru and began traveling in an arc. The crew of the freighter kept firing everything they could at the Grunion when suddenly a large ripple appeared around the Grunion's periscope. The 84th shot from the deck gun disappeared into this ripple and a column of water shot up, masking the periscope. A dull water explosion sound was heard, followed by the appearance of an oil slick where the sub had been. A long black rod was seen launching up and out of the water before falling back into the sea. With that, the attack was over and the Grunion, along with her crew, was gone. On October 5th, the U.S. Navy reported the Grunion overdue and presumed lost with all hands. Her name was stricken from the Naval Vessel Register on November 2, 1942. After the families of the Grunion were notified the ship and her crew were missing, they begged the Navy for answers, but the Navy didn't have any answers to give. The families sent letter after letter asking for any information, but the most they received was that the Grunion was missing. Indeed, the Navy didn't know what happened to the Grunion. Captured Japanese war records didn't show any anti-submarine attacks resulting in a suspected sinking. Much to the family's dismay, the Grunion was just lost. Decades later, in 1998, a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel named Richard Lane was in an antique shop in Denver, Colorado, where he saw and purchased a wiring diagram of the Kanu Maru for $1. This wiring diagram would set in motion the chain of events that would eventually lead to the discovery of the Grunion's final resting place. The diagram made its way onto the internet, where it was translated and an account of the Grunion's attack on the Kanu Maru was attached to it. The attack report gave a probable location for the Grunion. The sub's commander, Lieutenant Commander Jim Abele, left behind 3 sons who for decades had tried in vain to find out what happened to their father and his submarine. One of them eventually found the wiring diagram as well as a translation of the attack online. This gave them a glimmer of hope at finding their father's sub, and they continued to search for more clues for several more years until 2005, when one of the sons, John Abele, met famed oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard. Dr. Ballard is known for finding the Titanic and the Bismarck, among other famous shipwrecks. Dr. Ballard met with Jim's 3 sons to discuss the prospects of launching an expedition to find the missing sub. Dr. Ballard agreed to launch a sonar search for the sub, but wouldn't risk his ROV unless they found a viable target. However, to the dismay of Jim's sons, Dr. Ballard pulled out because he had committed to a project for National Geographic for the summer of 2006 and couldn't commit to both projects. He offered his advice and an assistant to help the Abeleys locate a boat that could survive the rough waters around Kiska and support the necessary equipment needed to locate the sub. The Abeleys eventually hired a commercial fishing captain in his boat for the job. However, the odds were against them. Every professional they consulted about the project advised them that the odds of finding the Grunion were slim to none. Even Dr. Ballard was highly doubtful of any success. Not only were the waters around Kiska extremely rough, the ocean bottom was made up of razor-sharp mountains and terrain that likely shredded the Grunion into pieces as it sank towards the bottom. The Abeleys were undeterred. They needed to know what happened to their father and his crew, and they weren't going to let anyone or anyone's opinions stop them. They went forward with the expedition to Kiska, and in 2006, a target was located using side-scan sonar in almost the exact location indicated in the attack report. The problem was, the target was too short to be the Grunion. In 2007, an ROV went down to the target and took video recordings of the object, confirming not only that it was a submarine, but it was most likely the Grunion. In 2008, after examining photos of the submarine and its features such as the propeller guards and limber holes identical to those of the Grunion, the U.S. Navy confirmed the sunken submarine was in fact the Grunion. The reason the sub was thought to be too short was because the bow was missing and wouldn't be found until 2019, a quarter of a mile away from the main wreck. After the Grunion sunk below her maximum operational depth at about 1,000 feet, she would have imploded. What remained of the ship struck the seabed, breaking off 50 feet of her bow. The wreckage then slid 2/3 of a mile down the side of an extinct volcano, coming to rest on a notch in the underwater mountain. There are 2 main theories as to what sunk the Grunion. Both have faulty torpedoes playing a major role in the Grunion's demise. One account is that the Grunion's final torpedo shot was a circular run torpedo, and after missing the freighter, it circled back and struck the Grunion. The torpedo hit the periscope supports without exploding. In an attempt to avoid the torpedo, the Grunion would have went into a steep dive. Unfortunately for the Grunion, the rear dive planes jammed, as was evidenced from an examination of the wreck. With the dive planes jammed, the Grunion would have descended deeper and deeper into the dark and frigid waters surrounding Kiska until surpassing her crush depth at around 1,000 feet, causing the sub to implode, instantly killing all 70 men on board. This is the version that Abele brothers believed caused their father's sub to sink. The second theory gives credit to the crew of the Kanu Maru for sinking the sub. In this theory, the Grunion, with all torpedoes expended, surfaced to engage the freighter with her own deck gun. It's not known if the Grunion fired any shots from her deck gun, but the 84th and final shot from the deck gun of the Kanu Maru hit the sub's conning tower, and through an unknown chain of events, the Grunion lost depth control, sunk past crush depth, and imploded. Faulty torpedoes also play a major role in this version as well, because had the Grunion's torpedoes worked and the 2 torpedoes that hit the freighter detonated instead of harmlessly bouncing off, then the Kanu Maru likely would have sunk, allowing the Grunion to escape and return to Dutch. Though it will likely never be conclusively determined which version resulted in the loss of the Grunion, what is conclusive is the Grunion was lost as a result of bad torpedoes. Either she was hit by her own torpedo and it caused a chain of events that led to her sinking, or the torpedoes she launched at the Kanu Maru failed to destroy that ship, allowing her crew to stay in the fight and score a direct hit on the Grunion's conning tower, causing a chain of events that sunk the Grunion.